Mr. Speaker, first of all, we have a 39-strong cabinet as executive government in the country right now. So all these honourable members of parliament that are in cabinet, they also run departments and agencies with secretaries and heads of department. If you put that along with the provincial administrators of the 22 provinces, that's 22 provincial administrators, that takes the total secretaries and heads of departments and provincial administrators up to 61 public servants that will come, as per this law, this amendment, come under the purview of the Chief Secretary. I'm just looking at the time effectiveness of this legislation and the practical reality of its enforcement. If in one day, how many secretaries and how many provincial administrators can the Chief Secretary deal with compared to all the ministers of state and all the governors in the respective provinces? And how are we diluting the powers of NEC and PEC at the respective subnational level and the national level to just basically say that you won't be responsible for enforcing standards and enforcing performance by these heads of departments? The practical reality is all ministers of state can, at one point in time, in one day, deal with all your secretaries and MDs at the same time. But if you channel all the powers of that responsibility to the Chief Secretary, he can't practically do that in one day. So we will be making the whole system of government more convoluted and more inefficient through this legislation. Although I commend the Prime Minister on the intent to get results on the ground, because we're all aware, Mr. Speaker, that the road to hell is littered with good intentions, and what matters is results, results, results. Now, we can't pass the buck and then say that, all right, we've had secretaries not performing the public service, which takes up a big chunk of the national development budget every year, Mr. Speaker. It's over 5 billion kina of public money, of taxpayers' money that is paid to public servants, and the people of Papua New Guinea expect results. And rather than making amendments, which as from where I'm sitting, there's some duplicity in these amendments, especially to Section 21, Mr. Speaker. And just for the Prime Minister to take note, I think the Honourable Member for Madang has highlighted a typographical error that needs correction. Otherwise, it renders the bill redundant. I stand corrected, Mr. Speaker. It was corrected. And then we come back to Section 21 and how there's some duplicity in terms of the legal terms of how we define the heads of public bodies. So my question, Mr. Speaker, is the Constitution talks about Section 192 and Section 193, the appointment of these officers, and there seems to be duplicity with respect to Section 21 of this amendment. And then my question is, does it extend to the Regulatory and Statutory Authority Act, which appoints CEOs? So that's something that I think has to be expanded and then just made expressly clear in the amendment, Mr. Speaker. I've already commented on the time ineffectiveness of this amendment, that it'll just not be practical for the Chief Secretary to crack the whip on underperforming public servants. So we should really take a long, hard look at ourselves, Mr. Speaker, and talk about how public servants get appointed in the first place, where we have continued to apply one-talkism, nepotism, and all manners of standards rather than meritocracy. And this is why the system is only good as the people in it, Mr. Speaker. So the reflected poor performance in public service across the country is a reflection of the total incompetence of the people that are in these positions, and then a failure of the National Executive Council to crack the whip. We have to be in the business of sacking non-performing public servants, Mr. Speaker. And I take stock of the good chairman of the Public Service Committee saying that they'll be bringing reforms to the Department of Personnel Management and PSC, because these reforms are long overdue, Mr. Speaker. We have an obese public service machinery in the country, and we have to reduce the size of the public service and make it lean and more effective. Now, the question that I have, Mr. Speaker, is we have the Prime Minister as the head of the executive government, as the chairman of the National Executive Council, bringing an amendment here talking about the performance of ministers of state. With the Prime Minister sitting there pushing this amendment, it's a complete indictment on ministers of state. If we're looking at the way the power is structured in the country as concentric circles or as an onion, you have the Prime Minister right there in the middle, then you have NEC around him, and then it's everybody else. So why is the Prime Minister trying to take the powers that ministers of cabinet should have to determine, and although, yes, you're right, your job is to implement policy, but policy cascades down to programs and projects that are implemented by secretaries and heads of department. And when they're not performing, it becomes blatantly obvious. Ministers are right there to gauge the performance of their heads of department, and they can make a call right then and there that you're not performing, you need to go. And these performance appraisals shouldn't be done on a biannual basis. They should be done quarterly, every 3 months. We should crack the whip and hold these big secretaries and big MDs to account. Otherwise, it seems to me, Mr. Speaker, that the National Executive Council is abrogating its responsibility, and they're trying to, once again, push their responsibility of holding public servants to account to the Prime Minister through the Office of the Chief Secretary, and it raises a lot of questions about what level of output we're going to see with this new structure, which seems to be impractical, convoluted, and it's just a lot of duplication. I just can't see the practical reality of it working with one Chief Secretary dealing with 61 heads of department and provincial administrators, how that's going to happen practically in an efficient manner to promote government efficacy. So at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, the country needs more than what it's getting, and the NEC really needs to step up. If the NEC is not able, if any minister is not able to have their heads of department toe the line and perform, then they shouldn't be passing the buck to the Prime Minister to then further pass the buck to the Chief Secretary. You should be putting your foot down and sacking these non-performing public servants. And if you're not doing that, you need to question your position in the NEC. And you should be sacked. That's how it works. We should be in the business of sacking ministers and sacking public servants when they're not performing to acceptable and expected standards. Accountability has to be enforced, Mr. Speaker. So that's my contribution to the debate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.